Alrighty, greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to our Monday night live stream for now week 9 of the 2024 fantasy football season. Over the course of the next hour plus, we're going to be answering any and all fantasy football related questions, whether it is waiver wire questions, trade questions, starter sit questions going into week 9. Of course, yes, it is early. We just saw the conclusion, of course, the New York Giants taking an unfortunate loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and my Los Angeles Dodgers most recently capturing a third victory in the World Series. Obviously, as we progress throughout today's episode, many questions will be sent in my direction. If you guys are going to send a direct question in regards to the live chat or super chat, make sure you include your scoring format, whether that is a standard, half PPR, full PPR. The more context you provide, the easier it will be to answer said questions going on throughout the stream. Now, additionally, earlier today, we did drop our waiver wire video in regards to the best available pickups at the running back, wide receiver, tight end, kicker, quarterback, defense, all those positions available within that episode. Of course, the thumbnail is Cedric Tillman, wide receiver of the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns defeating the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday. What a ridiculous week. I mean, look, Sunday in itself was I'd say a very bizarre week, to say the least. Obviously, it was the quote-unquote National Tight Ends Day, and every single tight end decided to have themselves incredible performances on a consecutive basis. Absolutely ridiculous. I guess there was a league memo sent out via email to every organization that was said, hey, listen, if you don't get your tight ends the ball, then we can't keep this moving. But either way, let's get to answering questions, shall we? Easy E sends in a question, says, hi, Andrew. Question is in the chat. Very well. Says, which wide receiver would you take rest of the season in a half PPR? Coleman, Pearsall, Jacoby Myers, Tillman, Hopkins, McMillan, or Downs? Out of those available, I think Hopkins has to be number one, just because of the association with that specific quarterback and the ridiculous need of a top-tier wide receiver to, on a weekly basis, contribute. So D-Hop would probably go number one in my mind in that overall position. Number two, and number three, I guess it's dependent on like what you trust more. Like I want to trust Josh Allen more than I trust Gardner Minshew. Therefore, I would rather have Keon Coleman at the moment, especially considering the utilization that he has seen in comparison to Amari Cooper. And then I would go with Jacoby Myers third. Even though he has Gardner Minshew, he is still implicated for a pretty high target count. Then at that point, at the number 4, I would go with Tillman. Because again, Tillman, even though he's coming off a pretty good weeks, he's still got to compete with a lot of upside players within that overall lineup. Now, you could argue that one could be over the other. Myers could be ahead of Coleman. Tillman could be ahead of Hopkins, or whatever which way you go about it. But that's how I have it ordered between the top 4 of that spectrum. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, let's see here. We had a question from the S box. It says, do I drop Juju Smith-Schuster for Tillman? I think you do, yes. Let's see here. Justin sends in a question. Said, I got offered Chase Brown for Dobbs. Do I take it? Yes, you do. Again, Chase Brown is the starting running back of the Cincinnati Bengals. He is the cleared away goal line back. He has scored 5 touchdowns in the last 5 games for the Cincinnati Bengals. My expectation is that, yes, he may not get himself all of the workload, and he may not get himself a lot of the receiving workload at that. But again, if he's going to be the cleared away running back, where he's getting the vast majority of rushing attempts, rushing touchdowns, I expect, the Cincinnati Bengals to be implicated within upcoming matchups where they're not getting blown out by the Eagles every week. That was a ridiculous game where it got out of hand very quickly. And hopefully once we get T. Higgins back in the lineup, there's even more touchdown upside in that circumstance. All right, let's see here. I see Tan Pham in the live chat. He said, what did he say here? Where did it go? It says that scoring 137 points in one league and barely beat my opponent. The other league had scored 139 and lost. Yeah. So I've explained this to many of you guys in the past. There are different ways to kind of structure your leagues in the future. Maybe you guys want to implement this, and obviously you can make a league vote on this. But the way that I've played some of my leagues, instead of just being like super hardcore and being like whoever has the most points scored by the end of the season, that overall team wins like the prize pool within our league. Which again, it hasn't really worked with many of the leagues with my friends, mainly because the matchups you have one-on-one against each other and the shit talking and all that kind of jazz, that is what people kind of want in a main league. But again, the overall suggestion I'm going to make, there's a league format where it not only takes your head-to-head matchup into account, but also if there's, for example, 10 teams in a league, the top 5 scoring teams in that given week also get a win. So it's based on average scoring and additionally head-to-head matchup. So at the end of the week, you can theoretically win 2 games. You can break even 1-1, or you can lose both. So that gives you a little bit better of a standing pool in terms of like, yeah, I had 160 points this week, but I lost because I was against the highest scoring team. You don't just get left off with an L. You at least have the potential of having scored within the top 50% of your league and then catching another W in that circumstance. That's something you guys may want to consider going forward. All right, let's see here. Christian Taylor says, hey, Andrew, questions in the chat. Sounds good, Christian. Thank you. Let me go ahead and scroll up. I had seen your name earlier. I think I was going to answer your question anyway, but now that you sent that in, it's more of a priority. So let's go back up here and let's see here. Is Mason droppable? He says. Christian McCaffrey is coming back and I don't have him. Has had 4 unplayable weeks, yep, and can't stay healthy, correct? If so, should I drop him for Tracy or Otten? Yeah, I mean, I think both those guys need to be picked up regardless, and I'd be willing to make that swap. Again, Jordan Mason does not seem like his shoulder is healthy, and if we're going to have to continue to like play Jordan Mason, watch the game, and pray every time he gets hit that he's not injured, that's not someone that I want to really have on roster, especially when Garendo is just as capable of a running back. So at the moment, yes, let's go after Tracy. Let's go after Otten. Try to pick them both up. Obviously, it's dependent on what you need as a kind of roster piece. I would assume running back something that you're going to need if you're losing out on Mason for the upcoming future in comparison to Otten. But then again, I don't know who you're playing at tight end. Thank you, Christian. All right, let's see here. What do we have here? 4-4 just beat the commissioner. All right, Javier, had a baby. Roger in the chat says, full PPR trade Amon-Ra for Breece Hall. If you need running back desperately, I'm okay with it. That I don't have an issue with. Michael says, Tracy looked good too. Bad he'll be out with a concussion next week. Yeah, there's a possibility of that. Again, yeah, he did leave the game due to the concussion protocol. We did 5 days. That player was Marvin Harrison Jr., which was much so of a surprise in my opinion. But again, there's a possibility in which he could clear the concussion protocol. But even then, even if he misses 1 week, he is demonstrated by far and away in the absence of Singletary, and now with Singletary back, he is the starting running back of this team going forward. He's played incredibly well in the opportunities that he's been given. John Zavala says, let's go Dodgers. That's right, baby. Let's go. Let's see. Robert Peace has caught this one from the get-go. Baby. Yeah, listen. The overall start of the stream is going to typically kind of fluctuate on Monday nights, Thursday nights after the games. It's just dependent on when those games end in comparison to, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. Those are typically starting at 7 p.m. here on the channel. PST, by the way. Thank you. All right, let me scroll down. TanFam sent in a follow-up. Says, should I flex McMillan or pick up Leggett for waiver? Ooh, that's a really good one. Considering Sterling Shepard's injury, considering they play against the Chiefs, I don't love the overall matchup this week, specifically for McMillan taking on that Chiefs defense. Now, Baker Mayfield, again, for the longest time, I thought to myself, Baker Mayfield's good because he is surrounded by Mike Evans and Godwin. I was mistaken. It's really that Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are good because Baker Mayfield has elevated them to that overall circumstance. Baker Mayfield's is a machine. Not only was he able to get both of the running backs into fantasy relevant positions, again, I mean, the fact that Bucky Irving had 7 receptions. On top of that, Rachaad White had 5 receptions and a receiving touchdown. Cade Otton was a machine within the receiving game. The fact that that is the case and he is still fantasy relevant, I know he threw a couple picks, but it comes with the territory of trying to get your team back in the game when you're trying to catch up with, Kirk Cousins lighting it up. But going into this week, between the two of them, I think Leggett might... I would not start Leggett if Bryce Young is playing quarterback, considering I don't know whether that is going to be the situation. I know that Leggett scored last week. Again, taking on like Marshawn Lattimore, I just would not trust it. I would not trust it in any sort of circumstance. So for this week, I'd probably still roll with McMillan unless, there was Andy Dalton available for Leggett to throw him the ball. Thank you. BDH Hopper says, hey, Andrew, is Devontae Adams even startable? I don't think so. I mean, look, we know the talent that he is. But the opportunities that he is being given are not good enough quality to designate him as a, where I've had him ranked, honestly. I've had to reevaluate. A lot of what I do is pretty much like trying to figure out where are these players going to end up. It's all future predicting, right? But, I mean, in a lot of situations, I can be very boastful and very much so confident in the idea of a player that has proven talent in the past going to find success, and then they fall short. And there's many of different variables that kind of feed into that overall circumstance in his play as of late. But like going into this upcoming Thursday night short week, Devontae Adams versus Houston, like I would assume that Houston's a decent matchup, but I can't guarantee that the guy can even get him, get over what I think it was, I had him at 4.5. I think I had him at, he needed to get higher than 4.5 receptions. He couldn't even do it this last week. Pretty ridiculous. Let's see here. Peter says, hey, Drew, I hope that my suggested pick of Otten, 4.5 receptions, paid off for you. Okay, so technically, it did. Yes, thank you very much. We greatly appreciate that suggestion. It was incredibly accurate. The only issue was that the play that I put it within, unfortunately, had Jordan Mason within it. I had the play was David Montgomery anytime touchdown, Caden higher on receptions, Joe Mixon anytime touchdown. All three of those legs hit, and then I had Jordan Mason who got injured. I didn't lose any money. My play got rescued because he didn't play in the second half, so no harm, no foul. But yes, thank you very much for the suggestion. That was great. Speaking of suggestions, earlier today on the waiver wire episode, we got back into the winners column. Finally, it took a little while though, but finally it hit. Finally, it literally tooth and nail in order to get a Wan'Dale Robinson reception at the end of that game. I mean, geez, Louise, why is it so difficult for things that should happen so easily to like always try to catch me at the last second? Same thing happened last Thursday. Aaron Jones 2 yards short for no reason whatsoever. What does it say? Your mic is going in and out. I'm gonna assume that's because I'm peaking my mic in terms of volume, but it's all good. It's because I'm being too loud. that's probably what it is. But yeah, luckily this pick hit. Luckily, geez Louise, man. The suggestions that I made on Friday's Hidden Gems episode, even though what was it, 4 legs on one of them and 3 legs on the other, even though on 7 legs, 5 of the 7 hit, it doesn't matter when 1 leg on each of them clips it very closely. It's unfortunate, but it is the deal. It is the nature of the beast. Okay, let's see here. Give Puka to get Kamara, half PPR need running backs. I'm okay with that. Again, if you're in need of running backs, I think Puka, again, is going to be a top-tier option, but so is Kamara now that we're going to get a return of Derek Carr going forward here. Tex Raider sends in a question, says, full PPR waivers. I have a free slot and Dowdle. Very well. Rank these in priority if I should make any moves. Ramondre, Worthy, Pearsall, Shakir, Ridley. Thanks. Okay, so Worthy and Pearsall, not really much of interest in my mind in terms of both of those pieces going in the long run in comparison to what Shakir, Ridley, and Ramondre could theoretically present. Ramondre is only startable in very, very specific instances. Now, I will say that there is something promising from his most recent performance on Sunday against the Jets. He played 81% of the offensive snaps, which is the most snaps that he has played all season long in a singular game. We saw 0 utilization of JaMychal Hasty, which led to even more receiving utilization out of Ramondre, and on top of it, 20 total plus touches within the game on the ground, leading to 2 touchdowns. Now, even though he was highly inefficient in his overall rushing attempts, 20 carries for 48 yards, it does not matter as long as they're going to continue to highly prioritize him as the RB1 and by far and away continue to give him elite level of opportunity. He would probably be the running back that if you're in need of a back going forward for a bye week, for any sort of injury, kind of insurances, that would be one of those options. Outside of that, I would lean towards Shakir as the number 2. In a full PPR, he could be argued to be the number 1 if you are not in need of running back depth. And then Ridley would be number 3. Again, I want to see Ridley put up multiple performances of that. It shouldn't take DeAndre Hopkins being traded out of town for Ridley to show up. It shouldn't require that because, quite frankly, DeAndre Hopkins wasn't digging into his workload. So it really is weird. But yeah, as of right now, those would be the order. Let's see here. We had a question that came in from Rogo. Rogo says, what's up, bro? I'm 6-2. Who we dropping? What does this say? Standard half PPR. We have CJ Stroud. We have Diggs. We have Cooper. We have Gibbs. We have Hunt. We have Kincaid, Swift, Seibert, Denver defense, Baker, Mason, Montgomery, Debo, Devontae Smith, Chubb, Higgins. Yeah, Mason is your drop. If you drop anyone, that is your drop. And nobody else is droppable, to be honest, off that team as it currently stands, Rogo. It could even be argued that Mason does have to stay on roster, but as of right now, we're willing to kind of pivot if needed. Robert P says refs took 2 RDs from. Yeah, I had a play tonight with Pickens touchdowns. Yeah, that was brutal to watch, but it wasn't that big of an entry, so I wasn't even bummed about it. Waleed says, Andrew, I've lost 3 weeks in a row with quote unquote elite squad. Reed sold me. Yeah, Reed going forward. I've got to reevaluate that by a significant margin. I mean, obviously, Jordan Love leaving the game at halftime does not help his overall upside in that circumstance, but we'll see how it goes. But yeah, we're definitely going to have to be careful with any receiving options from the Packers this week, especially if Jordan Love is going to miss. Wilson says, happy birthday, Andrew. 12-team half PPR, trying to trade a wide receiver away for a running back for depth. Okay, very well. So for an RB for depth. Okay. You have Amon-Ra, Jaden Reed, BTJ, Olave, Puka, and Deontay Johnson. Who would you trade away? I mean, look, as it currently stands, you really only have 3 startable options as of this current moment in time, Wilson. Amon-Ra, Puka, and Olave are your only startable, because until we get Jordan Love confirmation, Jaden Reed is not startable. BTJ is dealing with an injury, from what I read earlier today, is going to be a 2 to 4 week injury on top of that. And then Deontay Johnson's injured and may not play this week. And on top of it, may be getting traded soon. So if you're going to trade away somebody, it would theoretically be one of these guys that are not going to play for you or aren't impacting your current lineup going forward. So like Reed, BTJ, Deontay would be the first men out of the door if you're going to make any moves. All right, let's see here. Let me scroll back up here. Tillman dropped 29 on my bench. Still clutched the dub, though. Yeah, trust me, he dropped 29. He dropped 25 on mine in a half PPR. Yeah, look, I didn't trust it, and that's on me. I'll take the blame on that. I really wanted to wait and see. Like I was saying all week long, I want to wait and see if Jameis Winston can really pull this. And hey, he can do more than just that. Absolutely ridiculous. Strubs says, what's up, Andrew? Can you prioritize these waiver pickups? Strubs, where is the list, brother? Rogo says, cool, thanks. No problem. Trevor Lim in the chat says, I know it's kind of early, but PPR Madison, Keon Coleman, or Cedric in the flex next week. Okay, so Madison has a decent matchup against Cincinnati, which I would assume is not a bad play at all, especially if he can have any sort of touchdown upside. Keon Coleman versus the Miami Dolphins, I don't think that's terrible either. But do you blame me for wanting to play Cedric Tillman in a PPR? I don't know if you can blame me on that. I think I'm kind of like full in now. Like I specifically went back last night and I was like, hold up. Let me go watch this entire game and see how Jameis Winston diced them up. Like, dude, it's just, we know that Baltimore secondary has not been great. We know that, right? Across the entire kind of season here, where they've given up the second most receiving points to wide receivers, like, it continues. So I get it, but man, they got torched across the board. V says, is Goddard worth a drop? I got Njoku. Yeah, I mean, look, if you don't, so Njoku obviously has an upcoming bye week. As to when that lands, see Brown's schedule. As to when that lands, I think that is going to be the determining factor. So he has a week 10 bye. So it might be in your best interest to have a second tight end on roster for that week 10 bye. So whether that is holding Goddard or picking up another alternative option, that I'll leave that up to you. But if, again, you can go drop him for another alternative option for week 10, then sure, I don't mind that. Kaiser says, I'm currently 5-2. Now lost by 4 this week. Very well. So you're 5-3 now, I'd assume. Bench Stevenson, Tracy, and Puka. That's rough. Waddle and DJ did horrible. Yeah, DJ was hurt midway through that game, which was kind of weird. And then he ended up coming back, and then he just didn't look the same. I don't know what his deal is. I don't know what he'll pop up on the injury report with, but we'll have to wait and see. Higgins and Deontay being out didn't help either. Yeah, that was definitely rough. Yeah, who would have guessed that Tracy was going to go for over 140 rushing yards against Pittsburgh? That is beyond ridiculous. Beyond ridiculous. Straub says Downs, Tillman, Ridley, Sutton, and can you prioritize? I mean, look, as of right now, between those options, Downs is only playable if Joe Flacco actually takes over. So Downs is the last person in that conversation. To then I would go to probably going like Sutton. Okay, so I'd go Sutton 1, Tillman 2, Ridley 3, Downs 4, probably in that order. Is Pittman droppable? No, not yet. Again, the Colts are reevaluating their entire roster. We'll see whether or not Anthony Richardson can survive long enough to fend off the Joe Flacco pressure that is definitely on the organization to potentially take his starting spot here soon. BTJ was changed to day-to-day, right? I don't know. Was he? If he was, then that's information that I was not privy to. From what I read last night and earlier this morning, it was 1 to 2 weeks, but it could have changed by now. Maybe there was further tests on the matter, and then we've gotten more clarification on it. Lou sends in a question. Thank you, Lou. Lou says, I'm currently 5-3 in a PPR. We have Mayfield, Mixon, Bijan, Nakua, Shakir, Kincaid, Hubbard, very well. Trade Moore and Mostert for JT. Absolutely. No questions asked. That trade is immediately made. I am sending that in the inbox. Hopefully they accept it by tomorrow night and we're good to go. I think after that, you don't theoretically have to go after another wide receiver. I think you just hold on to that, and then maybe you can move Hubbard for a wide receiver if potentially possible, but that would be the only move that you would theoretically make in that situation, Lou. Otherwise, I'd like to have Mixon, Bijan, and JT rest of the season clearing away. Akuma187 says, what's up, Andrew? Should I be concerned with rostering Jordan Love and no other quarterback? Should I pick up Stafford? Yeah, I mean, look, there's a possibility where Jordan Love doesn't play this week. I know that they said that the test that they did with his groin injury doesn't seem very much so worrisome, but again, they want him to be at a full 100% rate. I would assume that they're probably going to just, take it easy over the course of the week. And if he's not at a full 100% rate against the Detroit Lions, they're not going to throw him out there. So picking up Stafford, potentially utilizing him against Seattle this week. Seattle, of course, their secondary is their defense as a whole. I mean, they can't stop the run either. They've been manhandled a lot as of late. So Stafford would be a pretty solid play there against a division rival where, of course, he's very much so comfortable and familiar with their defense. Christian Taylor says, Andrew, I sent in a follow-up. Let me see where that ended up, Christian, because it may not. Where did it go? Control F. Christian Taylor says, is Mason drop? Okay, so we took care of that one. Then he sent that one. And then says, I have 3 wide receivers, 2 running backs, 1 tight end, 2 flex. I have Adams, Kupp, Brown, Bijan, Mixon, Njoku, Cooper, Achane. Okay. Bench is Moore, Mason, Ingram, Ferguson, Deontay Johnson. I'm feeling Tracy, but in a PPR, should I drop Ferguson for odd? No, you should go after Tracy. Because you still have Njoku on roster. So you're fine. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, scrolling down, I think Catacomb has sent in a question. Catacomb Kid says, I have Josh Allen, I have Amon-Ra, I have McLaurin, Rashad White, Bucky Irving, Tank Bigsby, Pitts, ETN, Tracy, Deontay Johnson. Should I trade Amon-Ra for a better running back? Considering your other wide receivers consist of McLaurin and then nobody else. So you literally only have Amon-Ra, McLaurin, and Deontay Johnson. Those are the only wide receivers that you messaged me in this overall question. Considering those are the only 3 that I see, you theoretically cannot make that trade because if, in fact, you get into a situation where you trade away Amon-Ra for a running back and then Deontay Johnson doesn't play this week, you're kind of in a pretty rough situation. So I think you have to keep until otherwise noted in regards to Deontay Johnson's status, whether he's playing for that team or if he's waiting to get traded. All right, let's see here. Play Singletary if Tracy misses. It depends. This upcoming week, if I'm not mistaken, let's see here. The week 9 schedule consists of the Giants. I'm trying to remember who do they play. I can't even think of it off the top of my head. They take on, it's not a London game, right? Yeah, no, it's not good. If it was a London game, I'd have been in shambles. The Giants, who do they play? They play the Washington Commanders. I think they'd be an okay play. I mean, again, he'll be in the top 36, but he's not going to be like 100%. I mean, last time out against the Washington Commanders, I will say, though, Devin Singletary had like 16 points against them in a half PPR. So, again, it wouldn't be a terrible play overall. Adil says, hey, Andrew, check Discord. Yeah, let me check it right now. Hold Deontay Johnson or trade. Someone said in the chat. I think it's just dependent on like what you can get in exchange for him. Again, his value could increase drastically with a trade. Like if he ends up, for example, if he ends up on an actual contending team that is going to use his services at a higher level in comparison to where he has been at. I'm trying to throw, like, let's say he gets traded to, for example, the Chargers, okay? They're in need of an outside receiver. Quentin Johnson's been injured this season. We've seen a lot of injuries in terms of, the questionable nature of Ladd McConkey. Josh Palmer earlier in the year was banged up a little bit. They don't have a clear number 1 outside guy. So that could be a potential move. They're a 4-3 football team. They could be trending in the direction in which they might want to utilize like just a nonchalant 5th round, 6th round throwaway in terms to try to get him. You never know. And then obviously within the contract, I would assume like if you're going to trade away a player of that status, like they would make a deal where if like they'd have to send them back another pick if they didn't sign them or some weird stuff similar to the Calvin Ridley stuff a couple years back. All right, so let me go ahead and let me look at your question. Oh, dude. Okay, I see your message on Discord. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna share it with the live stream right now. Um, Absolutely ridiculous. Let me see if I can actually pop this up on screen. I think I should be able to right now. Let me just go ahead and filter through this entire mess. Here we go. So one of our members of our community sent me this message on Discord just moments ago. They won by less less than 0.2 points. Absolutely ridiculous. I guess that Pittsburgh Steelers, I mean, at least from what you said in your message, the Steelers defense clutched up for you. Besides the punt return, besides the multiple sacks, besides the fumble recovery from TJ Watt clutching up, man, that is a ridiculous way to win it. Congratulations, bro. That's crazy. Absolutely ridiculous. Deontay, anywhere else is better? Yeah, I think that's arguable. I think there are places that he could end up where he is not utilized as much as he currently is in Carolina. You got to remember, when he has been his most valuable, it's when he is seeing double-digit targets within this Carolina offense. If he was to go to, let's say, for example, let's say he ends up on a team where he's the number 3 receiver and he is out of sight, out of mind, getting 6 targets a game, he's not going to be as impactful in those scenarios, right? So obviously, it's kind of a wager on, do you want to wait to see what team he ends up on, or do you want to just send him now off of the potential of him being traded and what someone is willing to give you in exchange for that to compensate you for the overall kind of trade in that circumstance. Okay, let's scroll back up here. We had a question that came in from Nick Q3435. Says, can you add one more to the waivers? We have McConkey, Tillman, or Coleman. Can add one from waivers. Out of those available, and then let's see here, would need to drop one of either Laporta, Otten, or Kincaid. Too many tight ends on roster. Who would you add and who would you drop? Yeah, as of this moment, if it was my team, I'd probably go about it in the way of... So it depends on multiple factors. If we're talking about a full PPR scoring format, I probably end up with McConkey on my team. If we're talking about a half PPR, I probably end up with Coleman on my team. Now, you could argue that you just take Tillman and just run to the hills and just take him over both of those options. That is very much so arguable. We've seen only 2 weeks of full speed Tillman in the absence of Amari Cooper, and he has been the best wide receiver of the entire bunch. So the arguments can be made. As to who you drop, I think that is clear. I think I would drop Kincaid. I'll take the K-Dot momentum and the Laporta momentum, and I'll just ride that continuing forward in comparison to Kincaid having to deal with that, all the target competition that he has to deal with on a weekly basis. But for now, if it's like a full PPR, I'm probably leaning towards McConkey there. Nick? Vitamin says, I have CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, and Puka Nacua. Should Hill be a potential sell high with colder months coming in? It depends. Where does their schedule kind of lead them to? Again, in the second half of the season, typically the Miami Dolphins are awful. That has been the case each of the last 2 years, in which their winning record does not, it does not lead into correct directions in the back half of the season because of those overall games in which they're taking on the Jets in New York, or they take on the New England Patriots in Foxborough, stuff like that. But their upcoming schedule, their away games consist of Week 13 against Green Bay, which again, depending on how that ends up looking, we'll have to wait and see. Then the next away game that they'll have after that, because again, I'm looking at their upcoming schedule. Next week against Buffalo, the weather is fine in New York. It'll probably be next Sunday night, or actually it's next Sunday morning. It'll be fine. The weather's not going to be an issue. So then we have Los Angeles, indoor stadium, no problem. Then they have at Green Bay, could be a snowstorm. We're going to have to wait and see. That game is on November 28th, so we'll have to wait and see how that kind of transpires. The next away game after that is Houston. That's an indoor stadium. Cleveland, Week 17, Championship Sunday. I don't know what the weather kind of will look like on December 29th, but again, for those of you who are familiar with Cleveland weather, I'm sure you can kind of put together the dots to figure that out. Otherwise, the rest of their games are at home in Miami, and you wouldn't really have to worry about it. All right, let's hear. Joshua Wilkins sends in a question. Says, my team is Burrow, Gibbs, Connor, Chase, London, Kupp, Bowers. Bench is White, Irving, Pollard, JSN, Worthy, and Dak. Who can I drop to fill in for 49ers? As of right now, I think Dak Prescott is very much so a drop, unless, of course, you are going to... Let me see here. When do the Bengals go on bye week? Let me just confirm this. So currently, what does Week 10 look like? Week 10 does not have a... Okay, so I'd have to just go look up the Bengals schedule. It's probably like a week, if I had to guess, Week 13 or 14 bye. Let's see here. The Bengals have a Week 12 bye. So again, if you want to hold Dak Prescott until Week 12, you can. Otherwise, he is the immediate drop that I have in mind. Outside of that, Yeah, so he's the first in a way drop. I think that's the way that I go about it. Otherwise, the next drop would theoretically be Worthy or JSN. It's kind of up to how you want to approach it. If it's like a half PPR, I'd keep Worthy. If it's a full PPR, I'd keep JSN in that circumstance there. Joshua, thank you. All right, Duramodi says, Drew, what's good? Trade my Jameson Williams for Hopkins. Sure, why not? I think it's a buy low moment. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a buy low moment. Anybody who understands how that game was going to transpire, like I told you guys all week, he's not going to play much. Like if I go look at his overall snap count, I haven't looked at it yet because I've been preparing running backs for tomorrow's video. But if I look at his snap count from yesterday, remember when Ian Rappaport was saying he's going to play a lot? Yeah, surely. He quite literally played 32% of the snaps. I mean, literally 3% off of what Amari Cooper did the week before. Kind of what we anticipated. So if someone in your league wants to sell high on him thinking that he played a lot and they're not really aware of the circumstance, yeah, then buy him. Let's go after it. Judd Diaz sends in a question. Says, hi, Andrew. Trade Keon Coleman / Mostert for Connor in a full PPR. I would say yes. I'd say objectively, I'm clear in a way good with that. I like the upcoming schedule for James Conner as well. Maybe ensure you have Trey Benson. Well, actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, I think if in fact Connor was to go down with an injury, I think many who have Trey Benson are going to get upset once they see Amari DeMercado completely outsnap him, but that will come in time. But yes, I would make that trade. I'm okay with that. All right, let's see here. Frosty says, one team in my league has CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Hurts, Cade Otton, Josh Jacobs, and James Cook. Put over 200. That is ridiculous. That's like a DFS roster. That's like literally the highest scoring team of the week, right? James Cook, from what I saw, was RB1. Josh Jacobs was RB2. Cade Otton was tight end 1. CeeDee Lamb, yeah, those are all the number ones of every position. Dude, that is actual lottery level luck. Frosty, tell that guy in your league, buy him a lottery ticket. Like send him $10 and be like, yo, just go buy one and then, send me a mail after you win it. Because at that point, the luck is firing on all cylinders for him. Daniel says, AR droppable 4 weeks ago? Of course. Of course. Sam Fisher says, trade Amon-Ra, Otton, Higgins for Kittle, Tyreek, and Olave. Tyreek is better than Amon-Ra, or let's say, for example, he's equal in terms of rest of season value. Kittle's significantly better. Olave is probably better considering the injury. So yeah, I would take the Tyreek side. I have no issue with that, Sam. At least you didn't get Laporta 3rd round. Laporta 3rd round, I have a couple teams with that, actually, now that I think about it. Yeah, Laporta is, I mean, hey, he got a touchdown, and then he had another one called back. He could have theoretically scored 2 touchdowns this last week, but only pulled down 1 because the second one, unfortunately, was, I think they called it down short on the 1 yard line, and then the subsequent play after that led to a Brock Wright receiving touchdown. Pretty rough, but it is what it is. Let's see here. Trife says, did get Puka and JT and Collins, though, who all missed. I think you guys are talking to each other. I don't even think anybody's talking to me anymore. Okay, very well. Continuing on. Anadi says, hey, Andrew, trade Shakir and Ramondre for Tyreek in a half PPR? Sure. Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with that. Absolutely. Angel Montero says, Debo has a rib and oblique strains. No. I mean, look, again, luckily they hit the bye week this week, so hopefully he'll be healthy by the time he comes back. So basically, from yesterday's game, he'll have 7, 14, maybe 15 games. Let me see. What day do they play on? Let's see here. If I go to week 10 NFL, I know they play against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Sunday morning. So yeah, he'll have about 15 days of rest prior to that overall game, which again, he will certainly need in order to kind of recover. And I'm sure he'll be able to do so, Angel. The Beaver says, would you trade away Kareem Hunt plus T. Higgins for Kenneth Walker? Absolutely, yes. Without a doubt in my mind, I would have accepted that. I know that Kenneth Walker is coming off of a very lackluster performance, but it happens. Look, he is still one of the best backs in the league. He is still given, when in decent matchups in terms of overall game script, ample opportunity. But again, when the games get out of hand very quickly for them, they abandon the running game so quickly. It is just, it's ridiculous. But at least he gets the receiving workload. But for right now, yes, I would take the deal. Jason Williams says, drop Rico Dowdle or Tyrone Tracy and to hold on to Braylon Allen. I have roster Brees. I don't think I drop either of them. Look, Braylon Allen, I understand. Oh, man. Okay. So as it currently stands, if I was going to tell you which of the two that I'd prefer to have on roster, I'd prefer to have Tyrone Tracy on roster. Now, That again, that mainly has to do with the upcoming schedule of the Dallas Cowboys. Has nothing to do with Rico Dowdle's illness or anything like that. Him missing Sunday, that is irrelevant. I think going forward, Tyrone is the more valuable back. I could understand keeping Braylon Allen just to make sure that you have the handcuff on roster. I'd look to potentially try to trade one of those two running backs first, because again, if you're not in a if you're not in a small league where you're 8 to 10 teams, I'm sure you'll be able to move that in a 12 team, 14 team league for another piece theoretically. Or maybe like a 2-for-1 deal, so you don't have to end up like dropping so much value onto the waivers. Let's see here. Do I keep Nix as my starter or stream a quarterback this week? I think Nix is a really good streaming option, actually. Yeah, I think he's pretty solid against Baltimore. Lethal Jake sends in a question, says 3 wide receiver league in the Yahoo League dropped 220 this week. Wow. This team has Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Marvin Harrison Jr., Tillman. Jeez, Nico Collins is on the IR. We have Achan, James Cook, Montgomery, and Pitts. Dude, I don't know how the NFL... Okay, so Kyle Pitts, I don't know if you guys saw the second touchdown he scored. He fumbled before he got into the end zone. I don't know what camera angle that they had. Maybe they had a pylon cam that designated that he scored. But I'm pretty sure he fumbled on that second one, and they counted it anyway. They did not care. They're like, all right, send out the field goal unit. We don't care anymore. Joey says, think Neighbors is a potential buy low target after a couple bad performances with a buy coming in week 9. Yeah, I mean, week 11, excuse me. Yeah, I think, again, we know what his potential upside looks like. Obviously, he wasn't able to meet that today, but the opportunities are continuing to build up. I do not think he is a terrible option. Obviously, he just, he's had a couple rough weeks here. So a buy low option for sure. Absolutely. Pollock sends in a question, says, would you trade Laporta for Dowdle? In a full PPR, I have Tucker Kraft. Okay, so here's the issue with Tucker Kraft. If Jordan Love's going to miss any sort of semblance of time, I think Tucker Kraft is a lesser starting option in comparison to Laporta, to where I might want to hold on to Laporta in this scenario because, again, if they're going to take on, for example, Kraft is taking on the Detroit Lions this upcoming week, and Malik Willis is going to be playing quarterback. I understand Kraft scored a touchdown with Malik Willis, but I mean, I'd want to be safe now. In terms of your current status of running back, your other running backs are James Cook, Tony Pollard, which are auto starts, Ray Davis, and then you have nothing else. In the long run, obviously, it'll probably serve you well to make a trade for a running back of this status because, again, you're probably not going to find one on the waiver, and I think this is probably the best time to get a... Yeah, you know what? Honestly, in your situation, considering I think it is very important that you get a backup running back, especially before the Bills and the Tennessee Titans hit their bye weeks, yeah, I would take the deal. That'd be fine in my mind. Let's see here. And then you said I have Stafford. Also, Stafford hit our waiver wire. I have Baker and Darnold. I can only start one. As of right now, I'd be pretty comfortable swapping out Darnold for Stafford. That's cool with me. If you can end up, making it work. Obviously, I'm not using my number 1 overall waiver status on that. But if you can maybe you're at the back in the line in the continual rolling list, I'd be willing to kind of throw something in there. Double D23 says, trade Kelsey, Waddle, Coleman for Neighbors and Cooper. Kelsey, Waddle, and Coleman for Neighbors and Cooper. Okay, so I think it's 100% dependent on the context of what your current who's your current tight end if you're trading away Kelsey. Double D23, thank you. Let me know in the live chat. Frosty says he absolutely fumbled before the end zone. Yeah, that was like a Deshaun Watson. Was it not Deshaun Watson? It was it Deshaun Jackson who did that? I'm trying to remember. Maybe it was a college football player who did that a couple years ago. Lethal Jake says, I was so scared on the Pitts thing. Yeah, it was crazy. I was like, there's no way this is counting as a touchdown. And I had Kirk Cousins playing in that game, and I was like, yo, this has got to hit. Please just count it and just move on. All right, Javille sends in a question. Or Javille says, should I sell Waddle for a good running back or a better wide receiver? I mean, theoretically, if you can, sure, why not? I have no issue with trading players. I don't think anybody is someone that is a must-keep. If you can get the proper compensation in return, then yeah, absolutely. But again, coming off of this most recent performance, and obviously the fact that we haven't seen him with Tua in a while, it may be a little bit more difficult to trade him for a quote-unquote better wide receiver or a good running back. You might have to wait a couple weeks to get comparable return on the overall investment of a trade. Jocelyn says, Wando Robinson effed me. I lost a damn kicker. I lost a damn kicker. What do you mean you lost a damn kicker? What does that mean? Did your kicker get hurt? I don't know what kicker means. Maybe that's a term that I'm not familiar with. Drew D says, I think Love is going to play, but we'll see. His MRI came back with no damage. Yeah, I understand that. I'm just trying to play kind of safe as of right now because it is very early in the week. Once we get some practice reps on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, then we'll get a clear designation as to what we can potentially anticipate. Tex Raider says, I think ahead of week 10, a little Schultz on waivers, have Njoku worth a pickup. I don't really like Schultz, to be honest. I don't think I'd ever start him unless I'm like, that's my last option. You know what I mean? Jayville says, what's your thoughts on Stevenson? Flex him? Against the Titans? Sure. If it was a different matchup, I'd be a little bit less kind of inclined to make that kind of a start within the upcoming week. But again, there were some positive notes regarding Stevenson. Played the most snaps he has all season long, 81%. We didn't see a lot of the overall receiving workload go to other running backs. So these are positive factors going back in his direction, where hopefully he's going to be the clear and away RB1, very similar to weeks 1 and 2, in which he was a dominant performer, just like he was this most recent week against, of course, the Jets. What a crazy win. To lose, I mean, again, that Jets defense has a lot of great players. But when Jacoby Brissett is marching down the field and delivers a victory like that, I mean, good on Jacoby Brissett. Ridiculous. I'm guessing kicker refers to the last leg of the parlay. Yeah, that's probably what it is. I'm just not familiar with the jargon. Freddie says, should I be concerned about Hill? No, you should be fine. Daniel says, your call to run Achane helped me. Mason almost ruined me. I'm assuming I suggested Achane because you were playing in a full PPR. Because again, Achane in a full PPR is ridiculous. Each of the last 3 games, with Tua, 6 or more receptions. Like the receiving workload that Achane gets, he's a top 5 running back rest of the season. It is insane. All right, let's see here. Let me scroll back up. Walker says, I know it's early, but would you start Jacobs or Aaron Jones in a PPR? Yeah, I think it may be too early. Jacobs against Detroit, again, the last 3 running backs that have played against Detroit, like Walker, Aaron Jones, and Tony Pollard, have all killed them. So Detroit's run-stop defense, not as good as it was in the last couple years. Certainly not as good. And then we have Aaron Jones versus Minnesota takes on, I'm trying to remember, who the heck do they play this week? They play against the Colts. Oh, bro. Can we not start them both? Like that just seems like 2 automatic auto starts in my mind. Jacobs off of the... Well, look, if I had to choose one legitimately, I think I'm playing Aaron Jones. If Malik Willis is playing quarterback for the other team. If it's not... Well, actually, if Malik Willis plays, they're going to run the ball even more. And running the ball has been pretty... Honestly, it probably has to be Jacobs just off of recent performance. But I think I have... Like, just off of the principle of playing the Colts and what running backs have done to them over the entire season, I'd have to play Aaron Jones. So I'd probably have Aaron Jones ranked higher than Josh Jacobs as of right now. But I think they're both auto starts. Make Music says, I lost by 4, 123 to 124. Douglas sold me. Yeah, Douglas, it's done. Bye-bye. I don't want to... He will turn into the name who shall not be mentioned going forward. I am... yeah. He definitely has sold me in a couple leagues as well. 2 weeks in a row as well. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Should I trade Ladd McConkey or Mooney for Pacheco? Yes, either of the 2. If those are not starting wide receivers for you, I think it definitely will help you in the long run to potentially get another running back that can impact your roster at a top 12 capacity. Let's see here. Vitamin says, I have Montgomery, Jones, and Hall. Trade Jones for McBride and Tracy if tight end is Otten and Kraft. If your tight end is Otten and Kraft, I don't think you need to make a move. Again, McBride going forward, again, he's a great tight end. Don't get it twisted. But what Otten and Kraft have been able to present over the course of the last couple weeks here, I think are very much so comparable to where you can play matchups and be perfectly fine and just keep Aaron Jones going forward. So I'd keep. Jason says, what's good, Drew? Chase Brown and Mooney for Drake London in a half PPR. Again, if these are players that are not starters for you, then sure. Again, Drake London will continue to get back to his dominant form. Obviously, because Andrew put a entry on Underdog with him going higher than 50 receiving yards, he had to end up failing in every sort of capacity this week. So I take the blame on that. Because if I didn't put in that play, Drake London probably goes for 120 and 2 touchdowns. But it is what it is. And then we have... Chase Brown is really the most valuable piece here because Mooney outside of a Tampa Bay matchup is very much so not a startable option. So yes, I would take the Drake London piece here. Tony Lopez says, thoughts on Olave with Cart coming back? You mean Carr? Yeah, Derek Carr. Yeah, it should be great. Again, even with Spencer Rattler, he looked, great. Obviously, he was sent into the blue medical tent for concussion protocol. He cleared it. He was good to go. But going forward, again, with no Rashid Shaheed, it is the Chris Olave and Kamara show, which is 10 targets for both of them every game, I think, going forward here. Devontae Adams for Tyrone Tracy and Mooney. Depends on how desperate you are for that running back, because again, Tyrone Tracy's not going to play this week. Mooney in matchups that are not against Tampa Bay, they're not as beneficial for his overall upside, unfortunately. Any news on Pacheco coming back? I haven't seen anything. I haven't heard anything. Obviously, we'll get more of an indication as we get into Tuesday, Wednesday practice kind of indicators, but until then, I haven't heard anything. The only thing that I have seen, again, outside of back in week 2 when the injury was originally kind of sustained, they said it was going to be a 6 to 8 week situation. So if he was to come back this week, then it would make sense in that 6 to 7 week range. But I think week 10 is probably safe in terms of his return. Double D23 says, with Kelsey, Waddle, Coleman for Neighbors Cooper trade, I have Zach Ertz on my bench. So you'd be willing to start Zach Ertz every week for the remainder of the season? I think that's so sketchy in the long run. Geez. You have Ertz on your bench. Like in a full PPR, the last 3 weeks, Zach Ertz has been 10 plus points every game. So I don't actually mind the approach here, especially with the massive upgrades theoretically you could make here. But it's under the assumption that Cooper starts to get himself more workload going forward and Neighbors picks it up. Double D23, I don't love the trade. I'm kind of hesitant to make it. If you want to take it, go for it. I don't know. I don't feel any like a lot of these other trades that I see, like I'm like, yeah, immediately take that, or yeah, no, I have no interest in it. As of right now, I'm kind of like sitting on the fence because quite frankly, I don't know if I want that. I could understand why I might want it, because if Neighbors goes back to scoring 20 points a week and Cooper can be a 15-point guy, then at that point, pretty solid overall kind of turnout. But those events would have to happen, which again, I'm anticipating they probably do. So you'd probably take it, but then having Ertz every week as your tight end, man, that is just so sketchy. You'd have to go probably pick up another tight end off waivers and just hope. But yeah, we'll see. As of right now, I just don't love it. Make Music says ban his name. Haha. Ban his name? Whose name? Who are we talking about? Schnabel says, I don't think Pacheco comes back and plays well personally. Again, that's a speculation. I mean, that is a speculation and that is an opinion. It's not really a fact, right? So I don't know how, I mean, the return status and the potential play status, I don't think, yeah. I'm just not going to even continue with that one. We'll keep it moving. Vitamin Me says, is Tua safe to play rest of season at quarterback 1? I'm streaming quarterback for the rest of the team. Pretty stacked. I mean, I'd say Jameis Winston might be the better option, to be honest. That might be the approach that you might want to make in this circumstance. Let's see here. Gus says in a 12-man league, quarterback is Hurts, running back to Bijan, Kenneth, Achane. Pacheco, Singletary, Amon-Ra, Debo, Mike Evans, Waddle. Okay, pretty good-looking team. Would you give up another top wide receiver? Who would you give up for another top wide receiver? CD, Neighbors, Chase. There's no way you can get CD Lamb or Chase. I think Neighbors is the only one that feasibly is in arm's reach. If you were to go after him, you'd have to give up like Debo plus. Actually, you have a lot of theoretical like kind of movement. Man, you know what? Honestly, looking at your team, you could go after CD Lamb. You'd have to give like a lot for it. Actually, at that point, it's not worth it. If you're going to go after like CD Lamb, you're going to have to give away Amon-Ra and then some. Which again, at that point, not worth it. So it's probably a matter, like you'd have to give away Amon-Ra and Kelsey. And assume they don't have a tight end. And then after that, to go after Neighbors, at that point, I think it's just Debo. You just send Debo in the direction. As for Chase, Going after Jamar Chase, you could end up getting away with it if you just give away like Kenneth Walker, I think. But I could be mistaken. Just depends on what the running back needs are. If they're going to need a wide receiver in return, you could probably send like a bit of a combination, like a Waddle plus a running back. Theoretically could work. A. Chavez sends in a question, says, last Steelers INT won me the week. Wow. Ridiculous. 113 to 112.2. Congratulations, Chavez. That is a clutch way to win it. Galactic123 says, in a 12-man league, I'm 7-0, going against another 7-0. Okay. Played Pickens, lost by 3. Pickens had 2 touchdowns called back in this game. No question. Just bitching. Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. So I didn't know. Oh, actually, I had an inclination that it was probably going to not stand, but the second touchdown he scored where he got the same foot in twice, I thought that would have counted if you double tap one foot. But I guess not. I guess you have to, because his torso is pointed towards the field. You have to have both feet fully planted firm, toes and heels. I guess that is the new rule that is kind of been implemented here. BJ says, Andrew, who are some winners and losers for this week? What do you mean by that? What does that exactly mean? You mean like players, or do you mean like my rosters? Because I got some winners and losers, I'll tell you. Loco Moco says, would you trade Kyron for Amon-Ra and James Conner? Yeah, I would. Absolutely. Does he talk about Tracy? Says Kat. I've talked about Tracy for the last 3 weeks in a row. So if tonight requires me to talk about Tracy and he's somehow available on in your league, he should have been picked up many of weeks ago, and please do yourself a favor and pick him up. Let's see here. Scroll down. Drew says, same foot twice doesn't count as 2 feet. No, I understand. Like I said, I assumed it wasn't going to count, but I thought maybe, just maybe, they would do this one time where they let me, get some fantasy points out of it. That would have been fun, right? I mean, at least it's 2 feet. Same foot twice. Yeah, big deal. Check and Mate says, Denver or Philly defense next week? I'd rather play Philly defense. But then again, I don't feel as great about that either. Because, again, yeah, let's just play Philly defense. That's fine. Tillman rest of the season? Yeah, pick him up. Again, earlier today, we dropped our waiver wire video in regards to potential players at wide receiver, running back, tight end, quarterback, kicker, defense. So, yeah, Tillman's the thumbnail. He should be probably the first waiver pickup of the week, unless there's somebody from last week that wasn't picked up already and somehow is still available. Winners, people who scored a lot. Losers, people who did not. I mean, I think you can check the box scores. I don't think that requires me to say anything for it, right? I think that doesn't really make sense as a content point. Let's see here. Cheese MK says first at 6-2 now, but 7th out of 10 in points. Should I be worried? I mean, I don't think so. The first 4 weeks of the season were some of the worst weeks of all time. So honestly, I don't even. And if you've dealt with a lot of injuries, I wouldn't worry too much. Now, if your team has never been injured, you haven't hit a bye week, and you're still 7th in points, maybe we should worry a little bit. Jameis or Goff to start this week? I'm starting Goff against Green Bay. Forget it, dude. I'll win on my own. Have a good one, brother. Basil Abdullah says, what should I do? 10-man PPR, 6 playoffs. My team is amazing. Typed in chat. Okay, very well. I'm 3-4. Well, you wouldn't be 3-4. You'd probably be 3-5 or 4-4. My team keeps underperforming. I'm tied for 6th. Okay, let's see where your team is, Basil. Says, I have Jaden Daniels, Christian McCaffrey, Kenneth Walker, Hunt, Mason, Jonathan Brooks, Tyreek Hill. I mean, but look, when I look at your team, quote unquote amazing is great, but they've all been hurt. Like, you missed Kenneth Walker for 2 weeks. You haven't had Christian McCaffrey the whole year. Mason has killed you every single week. Tyreek Hill has not been relevant the whole year. Kupp has been injured. Reed has burnt you the last 4 weeks. Juwan Jennings has been hurt. Marvin Harrison has burnt you the whole season. And Laporta has burnt you the whole season. I'm not surprised you're 4-4, 3-5, whatever it ends up being, Basil. I think you're lucky to have that record, to be honest. And going forward, now that everyone's healthy, should be in a far better position, right? Because at least you'll have your actual strength intact. Jason says, Olave or Higgins rest of season PPR, looking to move one for a running back. Okay, I'd probably try to move Higgins, mainly because of injury history. That is the only thing that kind of concerns me with him. Goes who sends in the question says, I was offered Tank Dell for Chuba. I also have Brooks. I don't know what the overall injury status of Stephon Diggs is. If the injury, I know it was non-contact. If it's going to be season ending, yeah, I would want to have Tank Dell on my team over Chuba Hubbard. I would. So I'm thinking, well, you have Jonathan Brooks as well. So look, there's an incentive to keeping Chuba with Brooks until, but honestly, again, if that Stephon Diggs injury is more serious than originally anticipated, then yeah, I'm probably leaning in the direction. Yeah, I'm probably leaning in the direction of most likely wanting to take Tank Dell if that injury, again, is very serious. Number 2, choose one to flex. Elijah Moore, Khalif Raymond, Shepard. Elijah Moore would be the play this weekend. Thank you. Okay, let's do that. Basil says, I'm going on a 4-game losing streak. So, yeah, I mean, you just got to flip it to a 4-game winner at this point. Again, your team, like you mentioned, is strong. I agree. But again, once you have a full capacity Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, and the rest of the gang actually firing on all cylinders, your backfield specifically, Christian McCaffrey next week, I think you'll be fine. You'll have to win a lot of games in a row here, but I think it's certainly capable of doing it. All right, let's see here. We have Drew D, who says, I saw Diggs tore his ACL and MCL. He's done for the season. Really? Is that a report? Let me confirm this. I'm going to assume that that's not the case because I would have seen that report by now, considering all the notifications I have on. So I'm going to assume that you're just trolling me, but we'll see. Maybe you're not trolling me. Maybe you saw it from some other source, but they're just not designated. Yeah. Nothing yet. So you must have seen it from some troll or something. I don't know. Kaiser, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Kaiser says, I have Jalen Hurts, Brace Hall. I have Pollard, Puka, Higgins, Waddle, DJ Moore, Deontay Johnson, Bowers, Tracy, and Stevenson. Any trade suggestions? As of right now, I mean, again, Brees Hall, Pollard, Puka, Higgins, Waddle. Look, I would like to try to shore up your wide receiver 1. Well, your number 1 wide receiver is going to be Puka. I want to shore up your wide receiver 2 at very least by trying to move, like, you have Higgins, Waddle, DJ Moore, and Deontay Johnson. If I can't move at least 2 of those pieces in order to kind of get a secured number 1 wide receiver, I think that's probably the best way of going about it. Trying to find a team that, again, needs wide receiver depth. Maybe they've lost recently Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, etc. They've lost wide receivers at depth, and maybe you can go and give them 2 for 1. I think that'd probably be the good way of going about it. But again, it requires a team that needs wide receiver depth. Otherwise, I don't think anybody's going to be giving away, the better of the wide receiver group. It just depends on what is available in your league and what kind of situation specific teams are in. Gosu says, Komet, Hunter, Henry, or Zach Ertz rest of season. I mean, as of right now, considering I don't know the deal with Drake May, what is it, concussion protocol? Like, I would say that once Drake May's healthy, I'd rather have Hunter Henry on roster in comparison to Zach Ertz. But until then, Zach Ertz is probably the most valuable in the meanwhile. Samir says, do you send super chat to have question answered? No, you can just ask a question in the chat. And if I see it and I think it's something that needs to be commented on, then yeah, we could talk about it. So just type it in the chat. You're chilling. Straw Baton says, should I give Higgins and Stroud to Jaden Daniels? And Stroud for Jaden Daniels. It depends how much wide receiver depth you have. If you've got, like, if let's say, for example, Higgins is like your 4th or 5th wide receiver on roster, then sure, I take the Jaden Daniels side and let's roll with it every week. Because that's a quarterback you can start every single game, no questions asked, and really have no downside. Ronson Castillo says, or Ronson says, I have Josh Allen, Chris Olave, T. Higgins, McLaurin, and Tillman a wide receiver. My running backs are Bijan, Connor, Jacobs, and Stevenson. My tight ends are Otten and McBride. Full PPR, 2 flex league. Would you trade or make changes or keep it as is? I mean, at this point, if someone needs a tight end, I'm sending away Otten. Again, I'd like to keep McBride rest of the way, but if Otten is somebody that is going to kind of pull favor in terms of a trade, I have no issue at all sending away, for example, Cade Otton and Stevenson right now in order to try to get a running back in return that maybe hasn't had, a solid week or two in the last couple, but maybe you can go ahead and buy in on that, considering both of those guys are coming off of 20-point weeks, which again, we don't anticipate them to accomplish that every week going forward. You would be selling extremely high on two prospects of this caliber because again, you'd still have Bijan, Connor, and Jacobs. You're just trying to give yourself even more of an advantage by moving Otten and then Stevenson off of a very high week with very much so inefficient attempts. GB says, rank Stevenson high this week, Andrew. I'm going to bench him, and he is guaranteed to put up 15 points. Thank you for your sacrifice, GB. We all appreciate that. Thank you. Let's see here. Gosu follows up and says, is sending Tillman and Higgins for Puka or hire a wide receiver one? Okay, yes, that's perfectly fine. Walker Suter says, at a 10-team PPR, should I drop Laporta? My tight end is Njoku, and I have TJ Hawkinson on the IR. Will be healthy enough by Njoku's bye week. From what I've heard, Hawkinson's playing this week. So I think he will be healthy, but I think it might be in your best interest, Walker, to keep Laporta, then also keep Hawkinson on your IR spot. Do not remove him from that spot. Play with either Laporta or Njoku in your lineup this week. And then after Hawkinson plays well, if Laporta is to also play well, you wouldn't drop him, you would trade him away, theoretically. Again, if there is a team in your league who needs a tight end. Constantino says, my bro, in a 10-team PPR, loaded at running back, time to drop Mason with injuries to... Yeah, that's fine. I have no issue with that at all. Pick up Tillman. That works. Mel says, in a half PPR standard, now I'm 6-2, scored 161, leaving Tillman and Tracy on the bench. I need Stafford, quarterback, Winston rest of the season. Yeah, either one of the two. I prefer Stafford, though. I have Geno and CJ. Yeah, Stafford would be, honestly, a pretty good pickup for Geno going forward there. All right, let's see here. Scrolling down here. Xander Roberts says, do you like Tillman, Cooper, or Bigsby in the flex this week? So when you say Cooper, that's Amari Cooper, correct? If that's Amari Cooper, I'm not so interested in that. Bigsby's 100% contingent on ETN's status. I don't know if ETN's going to play. If, in fact, let's say it's a full PPR league, honestly, you probably just play Tillman in the upcoming kind of matchup. Otherwise, if it's a full PPR and ETN is, in fact, guaranteed to be out, I'd probably then play Bigsby. He had another great week. It was like 18 carries for 96. That was another great week. Unfortunately, Trevor Lawrence stealing the rushing touchdown inside the 5-yard line. Drew D says, are the Bills defense good enough to play each week, or should I stream instead? I mean, I think they should be fine this upcoming week. I don't have an issue with them this upcoming week. As for their upcoming matchups, that is obviously to be determined. Let's see here. Bills schedule. Let's see what the ESPN schedule looks like here. Let's go to ESPN. Upcoming schedule, they have Miami, then Indianapolis, which again, they're both great plays against. Then they have Kansas City, which I don't love. Then they have San Francisco, don't love. LA Rams, don't love. Detroit, don't love. And then they have New England and the New York Jets in week 16 and 17. So they can be rostered. I don't love the upcoming matchups and the week 12 bye. They're really good in the fantasy playoffs, week 16 and 17. But outside of that, I don't know if they're must starts in every single circumstance. Ian says, trade Braylon Allen for Cedric Tillman to the Brees owner. Yeah, if you're in need of wide receiver, I have no issue with that at all. BJ says, Andrew, how do you feel about some league mates complaining because I'm making a lot of roster moves? I think it's a big part of the game. Pick up players and try to improve your team. If people are complaining about you making roster moves, tell them to grow up. Like, why are they being children? I don't understand. Like, if they wanted a league where people weren't making roster moves, you can cap that. That is something that you can actually control as a commissioner. You can set it so where there are only so many moves that you can make in a specific week. I've seen leagues where people can only make 3 moves in a week. I've seen leagues where you can only have so many players on roster at each position, and it's capped to that. Like, every team has to have 2 quarterbacks. Every team has to have maximum 4 running backs. Like, you can control your league, but in this circumstance, BJ, like, if your league is saying these kind of things, I either say tell them to grow up or you find a new league, because they're bitching for no reason. Like, it doesn't make sense. Evil Claptrap says, who's better rest of season in a PPR, Ladd McConkey or Mooney? I'd rather have Ladd McConkey. Are they close? Are they so close that the bye week is a tiebreaker? No. I'd just rather have Ladd. The thing is, like, Mooney requires a lot of targets. And again, that requires a lot of high-scoring back-and-forth shootouts for that offense. Diego says, hi, Andrew. In a half PPR, Tracy, Ridley, or Tillman in the flex. Tracy's probably going to be in concussion protocol. I'd assume he doesn't play. Between Ridley and Tillman, I'd probably end up playing Tillman. Listen, Ridley's burnt me so many times this year. I don't know if one performance is enough to convince me of it. Especially considering I would assume that the Patriots are going to put Christian Gonzalez on him the whole game and just try to lock him down in double coverage. Psycho Bacon says, I have Hawkinson and Muth. Do I roll the dice on Hawkinson? Arthur Smith hates tight ends. You know what's funny? Arthur Smith actually loves tight ends. He is actually one of the more, favorable offensive coordinators to have when it comes to tight ends. Unfortunately, within the overall Pittsburgh iteration of his offense, in comparison to Atlanta and Tennessee, where he was the primary play callers of those offenses back in the days, where of course he was able to elevate, all these other options. As of late, definitely not looking great. So yeah, let's roll with Hawkinson for sure. Again, I expect Hawkinson at a full healthy rate to be a top 5-6 tight end. Let's see here. Frosty says, as a Packers fan who watches every play, is it still Reed? It is still Reed, but Dobbs is our most clutch. Yeah, I mean, look, in terms of who Jordan Love prefers, it is Dobbs and Reed in that exact order, though. Going forward, it's just a matter of, is he going to be healthy? Because we've been burnt way too many times on either really good overall game scripts or him getting injured. Let's see here. I see you, Mark sends in a question. Says, 10-team full PPR. My record is currently 5-3. I'm looking for trades for a running back. I have Mahomes, Caleb Williams, Bijan Ramondre, Tracy Algier, followed by CeeDee Lamb, Garrett Wilson, Higgins, DeAndre Hopkins, Sutton, Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice needs to be dropped, but okay. And Tucker Kraft. Very well. So Tucker Kraft is solid. Mahomes, again, as your starting quarterback, hopefully with DeAndre Hopkins in the lineup, he will continue to improve and obviously play as well as he did this most recent week. Bijan, again, is a keep for rest of season. I think so is Tracy. Ramondre, someone that I'm trying to move in the possibility in which you can get a running back in return. Like, I would try, if I was in your position, legitimately to send away like Ramondre plus either Sutton or D-Hop in order to try to get a running back. That's what I would attempt to do. Now, as to the potential of that taking place, it is very much so contingent on someone that is receptive to the idea of trading for Ramondre, which I will find, or which you will find very many are not going to be open to. But if you can somehow, some way sneak into a conversation where, looking at the running back field, if you can somehow, like Tony Pollard is someone I still want to have on roster. If you can buy in on that, I'm all in on it. I'm looking at all these other running backs. There's so many guys that just had like huge weeks, but like you're not going to be able to send for a Kenneth Walker unless you send something else. These guys all popped off. Brian Robinson Jr. is another one that theoretically could be picked up in this circumstance. Very similar. Najee's another running back that I don't mind. Again, he didn't score today, but again, he still is highly efficient in his attempts as of late. Dobbins is not a bad running back either. Yeah, those would be the kind of running backs. I mean, honestly, if I'm even going another step further, maybe you just send Ramondre straight up for Pacheco. But that's obviously very contingent on the injury kind of circumstance. Hey, Andrew, drop Juju. Is Juju a drop candidate? Depends on what you're picking up. Rogo says, am I still rolling with Denver rest of season? As of this week, I'm not going to play them against the Ravens. I'll play them every week after that, but not against the Ravens. Ben Matter says, yeah, okay, so we took care of that one. Depends on what you're dropping him for. If you're dropping Juju to get like Tillman and stuff, yeah, let's make him a drop. Schnabel says, do I trade Reed and Pearsall for Terry McLaurin? Yes, I would. Terry's been incredible since week 3. Absolutely incredible. Should I trade away DeAndre Swift and Jacoby Myers for Kenneth Walker? Jacoby will likely never play for me. Then yes, you would make that trade. Absolutely. Francisco Rivera says, hey, Andrew, would you trade Devontae Adams for Trey McBride? I have Puka, Chase, and Downs, and I need a tight end. Yeah, I'm okay with that. That's fine by me. Cameron says, should I trade Kincaid? Interesting. Kincaid is 2 different words. For Taysom Hill, I have Cade Otton. No, you don't want Taysom Hill. If it's Tyreek Hill, sure, but not Taysom Hill. Should I sell high on James Cook? He's had 8 touchdowns this season. He has blown out last season's total touchdown score by 4x now? If he just keeps scoring touchdowns, I don't know why you would want to trade him. Unless, again, you can get somebody that is more valuable, which in comparison to him right now, maybe if you can get a Kamara, sure, I'd go for it. If you get a Kyron, sure. Brees, absolutely. But outside of those players, I mean, like Kenneth Walker could be in the conversation of someone that you can go after. But like outside of those, like Achans, who else are you going to theoretically be able to get in return? Paul Adams sends in a question. Thank you, Paul. Paul says, full PPR trading away Mike Evans, Reed, McLaurin, Swift for Nico, Chase, and Achane. Yeah, cool. Sounds good to me. Again, Evans is injured. Nico is injured, but Nico comes back at a quicker rate. Chase is the most valuable prospect of the entire conversation, and so is Achane. So that's a clear trade, in my opinion, in which I would be very much so happy to make. When I look at like Reed, McLaurin, Swift for Chase and Achane, I will take the Chase and Achane signed every single time. And then on top of that, you get Nico Collins, which once he comes back healthy, if there's serious damage to Stephon Diggs, at that point, I mean, Nico Collins picks up exactly where he left off, which is being a top 5 wide receiver rest of the way. Pretty good, well off. Basil says, Andrew, I'm too indecisive. Are you sure I should just hold onto my team? Or should I go for Collins or Kamara? Kamara owner is asking for a decent wide receiver and a good running back, but doesn't like my running backs. I mean, again, that's the thing. You have to find league mates that are receptive to what you have on roster and want to actually make constructive trades. Everybody is looking to try to absolutely objectively win their trades. That is not how this works. You cannot objectively win every trade. There are going to have to be give and take. So if you want to be a little bit more proactive in the trading conversation and give up more to just try to switch up your roster, you certainly can. I'm not going to, point you away from that. But again, don't overpay for players. That's the only issue. Justice Reborn says, hey, bro, need help. I'm here to help. What's your question? Baller sends in a question, says, full PPR, I'm 7-1. Should I trade Jacobs, Amon-Ra for Lamb? No, I'd keep Jacobs and Amon-Ra. Unless you're playing in a 6-team league, there's no reason you should. Kamikaze says, hey, Andrew, in a half PPR, I have Jalen Hurts, Chase, Neighbors, Jacobs, Tracy, Kincaid, Ladd, benches Ramondre, Dobbs, Dowdle, Odunze. Yeah, Odunze needs to be dropped, brother. Odunze, I think, is a very much so... actually depends on DJ Moore's injury status. We'll get a little bit of a better understanding by tomorrow. And whether or not it's actually like a serious thing, it's probably not. But Odunze probably needs to be dropped. Outside of that, again, Jalen Hurts, Chase, Jacobs, those are guys that do not move off this roster. If you're going to make trades, I'm of the opinion that Ramondre needs to be moved. Absolutely needs to be moved. So I'd probably be in the business of trying to get a running back in exchange for him. Or if somebody is looking for a wide receiver in exchange for him, then again, you'd probably have to ship off someone. Well, actually, you don't really have any wide receivers. I guess it would be Ladd McConkey that would need to be shipped off, which again, at that point, you would need another wide receiver on roster because Dobbs is not startable without Love in the lineup 100%. So yeah, Ramondre is the guy that I'm sending away, and I'm looking for running backs in exchange for him. See if anybody in your league who is obviously dealing with the potential of maybe the lack of the lack of upside that we have most recently seen. I don't know. Maybe you can go buy in on it, Aaron Jones. I doubt it. Probably impossible, but just throwing it out there. Brian Robinson Jr., Tony Pollard, J.K. Dobbins, Najee Harris. I'd rather have those players than Ramondre rest of the way. Paul Adams says, hey, Andrew, can you check the rosters for this trade on Discord? Yeah, sounds good. Let me check that out right now. All right, so of this trade, looking at it across the board. Okay, so let me look at your team here. So you're sending this away. You would have Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase on top of Kyron Williams, Achane, Mark Andrews, Tony Pollard, and then eventually, once in fact you get Nico Collins back, you will start Nico Collins in your flex, and you will have Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, Kyron Williams, Achane, and Nico Collins, which again is a really ridiculously strong roster. And even with the trade of giving up more depth than you were getting in return, you still have Khalil Shakir, Deontay Johnson to be able to hold within. And then also additionally, you have the ability, oh wow, you have two strong defenses there too. But yeah, probably you can hit the waivers and find a lot of upside going forward. I think you take this deal, honestly. I'd like to take the Achane and Chase side because I know both of them are going to be top 5 rest of the way. And Nico Collins, once he is healthy, is also top 5. So why wouldn't I take that side of the deal in the long run? Thank you. All right. Let's see here. Aaron says, Baker or Bo next week? Tank Dell or Waddle or Smith? Okay, Tank Dell's Thursday night upside is based on the overall status of Stephon Diggs. We'll have to wait and see. If Stephon Diggs theoretically is not active, I think that would make it a little bit more enticing to play. Tank Dell as the primary number 1 of the offense with no real competition. Now, in the event that, let's say, Stephon Diggs is active and all that kind of jazz, I'd probably be looking to pivot to play Devontae Smith in that circumstance. In comparison, Devontae Smith and the Eagles play against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Again, I've talked about it ad nauseum over the course of the season. They are one of the worst secondaries in the league. They play a lot of man coverage, and it gives a lot of opportunities for wide receivers there. And so Smith would be that guy. Ben Matter says DJ Moore is fine. I'm hearing. Take with a grain of salt, though. Yeah, we'll wait and see. Again, we want to hope that he's healthy, but we're just going to be very cautious with it for now. Jorge Perez is on a full PPR. I have the Lions and the 49ers defense. Should I keep both? No. Look, the Lions defense, again, they're not as great of a fantasy play as we would like them to be. They've had a couple solid weeks here. Obviously, the punt return was very much so beneficial for them, and the fact that they took on the Titans of all defenses. But outside of that, like, again, they're very much not very reliable as of thus far. Let's see. Leandro says, Demarcus Robinson or John Mechie? I'd rather have Demarcus Robinson. John Mechie hasn't done much, and I don't expect him to do much even in the absence. Let's say, for example, we were going to have Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs missing. I still wouldn't expect much out of John Mechie. X Factor says, I'm out of budget on waiver. Tillman, Ladd, and Josh Downs are all on waiver. If I can snag one early when waiver drop, how would you rank it? As of right now, it would go Ladd 1, it would go Tillman 2, it would go Josh Downs 3. Okay, we took care of that. Terry Fiji says 4-4 roster. That's my team. Strengthen. I might need to drop one for Love's injury. I mean, considering if you need to drop one, yeah, this kind of sucks because at this point, like, your drop is probably Braylon Allen. That's your drop, Terry. Honestly. B Normie says, how do you feel about Olave and Reed going forward? As of right now, Olave, again, with the apps, I think somebody asked me this earlier. Somebody sent me a Twitter DM earlier today. Said, which one do you prefer rest of the season? I said, I'd rather have Olave. Especially with no Shaheed. Like, there's no one else besides Kamara to catch the ball in that offense. Like, I don't expect Bub Means or Jawan Johnson to be competitive factors in terms of target upside. It's going to be the Olave and Kamara show. Do you like the Saints or the Pats as a streaming defense this week? Xander, earlier today, I had my waiver wire options available. I currently have the Saints as the number one defensive pickup, along with the Patriots are on there. So like the four defense I mentioned in the video that I posted earlier today was, as of right now, number one was the Saints, number two was the Bengals, number three was the Titans, number four was the Patriots. Now, number one Saints was contingent on Bryce Young playing quarterback. If it is Andy Dalton, I don't want anything to do with it. I would want to just probably go after Cincinnati at that point, or in your case, the Patriots. Justin sends in a question, says, Ladd, Madison, or Lockett next week? I'm not playing Lockett at all. So if it's between Madison and Ladd McConkey, between those two, Cincinnati's matchup is really nice in comparison to when we have to have Ladd McConkey taking on Cleveland. I'd have to go look at the matchup in regards to their nickel cornerback and how well he's played against opposing slot receivers to see what kind of potential upside Ladd McConkey theoretically has. If it's a full PPR, I'm probably going to, for right now, lean towards Alexander Madison there. Jonathan Lee says, in a 12-man, full PPR, 6-man playoffs, I'm 3-5. I'm on a 2-winning streak. Jalen Hurts, Devon Achane, Gibbs, A.J. Brown, Amari Cooper, Kincaid, Chase Brown, Koo, Broncos, Worthy, Warren, Pearsall, Jennings, Tolbert, Hunter Henry, and Wright. Any moves? Yeah, look, I think if Amari Cooper cannot improve going forward, you are in desperate need to address that wide receiver 2 conversation. Because otherwise, Jalen Hurts, Achane, Gibbs, AJB, none of them move. All of them have passed their bye weeks. They are incredible rest of the way, are auto starts. Kincaid is a solid tight end. Chase Brown is a solid flex. Koo is a great kicker. Broncos are a great defense. Amari Cooper is your X factor. That is the determining factor as to whether or not you're going to win a lot of these games going forward. So if there's a potential which you can either hit the waivers or, like, dropping Jalen Tolbert theoretically or Jalen Wright. I understand, dropping Jalen Wright's a little sketchy considering he's the handcuff to your Achane, but Tolbert would be the drop in order to pick up a player, and then you have to hope that Amari Cooper puts something together, because I don't want to trade away any of your starters. I want to move, some of your bench pieces away, and you wouldn't be able to do so because the 49ers go on bye. Worthy hasn't done a lot to consider himself as a trading target, so you pretty much kind of have to wait until Amari Cooper either pops off or somebody off of the waivers you pick up kind of clicks. Paul Adams says they accept the offer. Let me scroll up for the context. So, scrolling back up, they accept the offer. Yeah, so you're going to get Chase and Achane, right? Beautiful. Congratulations. That's fantastic. We love it. JK sends in a question. Says in a full PPR, what should I do with Adams? As of right now, I'm thinking bench. Especially going into Thursday night's game, I'm thinking bench. But let's see what the rest of your team looks like. You have London, Higgins, Watson, Slayton, Dowdle, Tracy, Taylor, Jones, Warren, Singletary, and Brooks. Okay, so you've got a lot of running back depth. And you've also got a lot of wide receiver injuries. Watson is not startable, especially if Malik Willis doesn't end up playing. And even if Jordan Love plays, it doesn't mean that he is startable in the given matchup this week against Detroit. But again, he could be. We'll have to wait and see. Slayton, again, is coming off a pretty solid week, but I don't think that is more of a commonality than we may, again, that's 1 week out of 5 that he's played with Neighbors in the lineup. So it's very few times that we've ever seen this kind of upside from him. Considering Higgins' overall scenario, if by Thursday we don't have an indicator that he's going to be healthy and playing, I think you have to play Adams alongside of London. Otherwise, I want to play Higgins in London and avoid any sort of Adams potential in that circumstance. And I'd rather play 3 of your running backs like Jonathan Taylor, Aaron Jones, and either somebody like probably either Singletary, Tracy, whichever one of those two, or Dowdle this week in your flex. Thank you. Flashy sends in a question. Says in a full PPR, we have AJ Brown, Sutton, for JT/Neighbors. Yeah, absolutely. Give me JT and Neighbors. That sounds great to me. That is fantastic. That is a massive win for you. Getting JT and Neighbors going forward there. Matt says chat with Nico and Diggs out next week. Is Schultz the best tight end pickup? Well, here's the thing. Is Schultz even available? I mean, I would assume that he's maybe not. I mean, when I looked at his overall roster status on Yahoo earlier today, it wasn't very low. Yeah, he's already rostered in 63% of leagues. If he's available, in the absence of Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins, he would be a solid play, I would assume, this week. Yeah, for sure. Levant says, hey, Andrew, I'm currently 4-4. My league, third place in a half PPR. Would you recommend doing any moves with the roster? Okay, I'd have to see the roster here. Did you end up typing it in? Once you type that in, let me know. Thank you. Or I'll see it in the chat once it pops up. Ew, 2K says in a half PPR, I need 1 running back, 1 wide receiver, 1 tight end. Okay. As of this week, it's a little early to kind of make these declarations, but if I was going to, I'd play Otton at tight end. I'd play Ingram in the flex. I'd also play McBride in the flex. Then at running back, I'm starting Pollard, and at wide receiver, I'm playing Tillman. That's the way that I'd go about it this week. Ew, 2K. Again, from the top to the bottom, your starting running back is Pollard. Your starting wide receiver is Tillman. Your starting tight end and 2 flexes are all tight ends. You're playing Ingram, McBride, and Otton. Thank you. Let's see here. Levant says, I have Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Stephon Diggs, Kareem Hunt, Kenneth Walker, David Njoku, Ricky Pearsall, JSN, Hubbard, Charbonnet, Hunter Henry, DeAndre Hopkins, Tracy, Juju, and Puka. It's a lot. I'm sorry. No, you're good, man. I've done this long enough to where I can mentally visualize the roster top to bottom once you've gone ahead and kind of displayed it there. So in terms of way I'm going to construct this team, so if we get information tomorrow in which, let's say, for example, horribly, Stephon Diggs has sustained a horrible injury and he's going to be out for a considerable amount of time. If that is going to be the case, your number 2 wide receiver going forward would theoretically either be JSN or Pearsall or DeAndre Hopkins, which in this, actually, no, you have Puka. Never mind, scratch that. So you have Jamar Chase, Puka. You have Joe Burrow at quarterback. Your running backs are Kenneth Walker and Chuba Hubbard with Kareem Hunt. Honestly, if I was in your position, I'm trying to find a way to trade for Pacheco. So you're not going to lose the value of Kareem Hunt. That's the way that I'd approach it. Because otherwise, stud quarterback, stud wide receiver, stud tight end, great run. The running back depth is pretty solid until we lose Kareem Hunt in a couple weeks here. That's the only thing that I'm immediately looking at and thinking, I need to improve upon this. See if you can get Pacheco for the future. See what they would want in exchange for that. Otherwise, maybe be like, hey, you want Hunt? Because honestly, I'm trying to build up this team for the future, and I think that's a great way to doing so. Okay, Justice Reborn. Did you have any message? I don't think you've actually you typed in earlier like, hey, I need some help. Okay, here we go. I see your question now, Justice. All right, Justice says, in a 12-man full PPR league, I have Murray, AJ Brown, Saquon, Bucky, Waddle, Kittle, Pearsall. Okay. My bench consists of Ray Davis, Jordan Addison, Pop Douglas, Wandell Robinson. Any tips? Week 8 will be tough with Kittle and Pearsall out. Yeah. I mean, Pearsall's not going to really play that big of an impact, even though he was okay for a full PPR league. He scored over 10 points. That's, we'll take that in a flex overall capacity. But yeah, Kittle's going to be a major loss in this circumstance. That being said, I think you still got a really good team with Murray, AJ Brown, Saquon, Bucky obviously getting himself a lot of receiving utilization. Waddle solid there. In terms of how you're going to approach this, I think Pop Douglas needs to probably be dropped. I think there's a consideration to where maybe even Addison needs to be dropped, to where you're hitting the waiver wire and trying to pick up any of these guys. Even an Elijah Moore, Tillman, these guys are definitely something that I want to have on roster. Now, if you had more running back depth, I'd say, okay, maybe we can make some moves here. But outside of Saquon, Bucky, you don't have anybody else that is startable. Like you have Ray Davis. So unless you're sending away like a Saquon for 2 players in exchange, you can't do that. AJ Brown, Waddle have to be kept, unless, again, you're going to send away an AJ Brown in order to get 2 wide receivers in return. But then again, I don't think it's actually worth it in the long run, unless, of course, you're getting like buy lows on a couple players that really are way greater value than they're currently being like kind of registered as. Like if you're able to send away AJ Brown and get Neighbors and another receiver on top of it, I would be willing to make a move of that capacity. But it's just a matter of, is someone going to actually send that in your direction and be kind of receptive to that trade? Jackie Johnson says, hey, Andrew, should I trade Chuba Hubbard and Jonathan Brooks now as a package or keep? I'd be willing to send them as a package. I have no issue with that at all. Again, the way that I see it, eventually they're either going to split the backfield, and in their upcoming matchups, when we look at what the Carolina Panthers have to deal with, in terms of schedule-wise, again, it's very much so dependent on the teams they play and who plays at quarterback. Like when they take on New Orleans this week, they could succeed. Their running game is not great in terms of their run-stopping defense. The Giants are a great matchup for them. Then they have to go on a bye week. Then they get the Chiefs, the Buccaneers, the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Arizona Cardinals, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers again. They take on teams that, outside of the Dallas Cowboys, are all playoff contenders, which at that point is all negative game script and is less rushing attempts on a per-game average, which, again, theoretically kind of lowers the value of these players if they are a tandem backfield. So, yes, if you can trade them as a duo, you should do it now. Why Ladd over Tillman? Just because I've seen more of him, and I know for sure he's the number one, guaranteed, no questions asked. Like the fact that Elijah Moore is still out targeting Tillman, and the fact that we still have Njoku and Judy in that offense competing for targets does have me a little bit worried in comparison to Ladd, who competes with quite literally no one within the offense. Is it a run-only scheme? Yes, but when they throw the ball, they are implicating him for a greater workload, kind of in terms of percentages. But yeah, listen, I said it earlier in the live stream, and I'll say it again. If you prefer Tillman, go for it. I have no issue with that. No issue at all. Theoretically, he could finish as the number 1 wide receiver of that offense. And if he's going to be, and if he's going to trend in that direction and continue to garner this high volume of targets, then there's no questions asked. He is a great overall pickup. I've just seen more from Ladd to where I'm comfortable with that. Drew sends in a question, says, I'm in a 14-team full PPR. I have 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, and 2 wide receivers, and 1 tight end and 2 flex. We have Josh Allen and Russell Wilson, along with running backs Hall, Hunt, Moss, Algier, and Allen. Wide receivers are Jefferson, Marvin Harrison, Downs, Pearsall, Tillman, Lockett, Mike Williams. Tight ends are Pitts. How should I upgrade? Well, first and foremost, you got to trade away Mike Williams. I don't think that, or we got to drop him at very least. Outside of that, how do we improve this team? Josh Allen's a great quarterback. He doesn't move. Hall does not move. Hunt needs to probably, I think Pacheco is another one of the suggestions here, because when I look at your team, you have Hall, Hunt, Moss, Algier, Allen. So you basically have 1 starting running back 2 weeks from now, because you will not be able to objectively outright start Hunt with Pacheco's return. Moss is not a starter, Algier is not a starter, and Braylon Allen's a handcuff. So you need to trade for a running back. The way you go about it is either shipping away someone of the talent of Tillman who you have on roster in order to sell Omega high on him, in order to get a running back in return. Maybe somebody's willing to give you someone's willing to give you a running back. As of to what status? Again, Najee Harris should be attainable. A J.K. Dobbins should be attainable if they are desperate enough for wide receiver depth. Chase Brown. I mean, shoot, you could even go after, Tony Pollard, like I mentioned before. Maybe somebody gives you like a Rashad White, theoretically. That could be in the realm of possibility. At least you get a little bit more depth to where you have an actual starter on roster. Or again, you go after Pacheco, which I think is probably the play. The Powder Blue sends in a question. Says, I dropped Prescott for Caleb Williams this week. His offensive line did not help against this. Wow, I almost slipped up. Let's not use that derogatory term, shall we not, Powder Blues? Do I drop him for Nix or Herbert? Do you drop him for Nix or Herbert? As of right now, Bo Nix. Or even Trevor Lawrence? No, I'd rather have Bo Nix. Thank you. Jorge Perez is in a full PPR, hitting the waivers. Could you rank McConkey, Tillman, Coleman? Current wide receivers are... Yeah, as of right now, I have McConkey 1, Coleman 2, Tillman 3. Again, like I mentioned earlier, if you want to go after Tillman off of what he has done in the last 2 weeks, I have no issue with that at all. You can pick him up above all, but the way I have it is McConkey 1, Coleman 2, and Tillman 3, just like I had in the video earlier today. Thank you. All right, guys. Typically, I like to have these streams about an hour, hour and a half max. We have been here for an hour and 33 minutes. I think that's where we're going to close it. I appreciate y'all coming through. I'll be back tomorrow with my top 40 running back rankings. Again, we did post the waiver wire episode earlier today. I appreciate y'all. Again, if you guys want to ask me unlimited questions, you can check out the Patreon if that's something that you are interested in. Feel free to potentially support there. Otherwise, no problem. Again, I'll be here live streaming every day, answering questions to the best of my ability. So that doesn't need to be traveled down if that's something that you're not comfortable with. Or, of course, you can check out Underdog, which you can get rankings every single Sunday morning. You can also find the rankings alongside of that in regards to the overall. I just got sidetracked because Powder Blues is starting to piss me off now. So yeah, outside of that, Underdog rankings, Patreon rankings, that's basically it. We're good to go. Thank you guys. I appreciate y'all. And have a great night. Dodgers are 3-0. They're going to clean the sweep tomorrow. And I'll probably be on after that game. So whenever that takes place, probably around 7:30 p.m. It should probably end around then. Hopefully. We'll have to wait and see. A baller says, you never read my super chat. No, I did. I answered it. Hopefully I can just go back really quickly and answer it for you right now if you're still listening. I said, no, do not make that deal. I'd rather have Amon-Ra and Jacobs going forward. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, guys. Have a great rest of your night. And until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace.